Rain tapping on the window and the sounds of thunder in the distance blend with a low hum of conversation. The scent of coffee that lingers in the air, rich and familiar, like she had always belonged there. She watched droplets race down the glass, her mind drifting with them, thoughts tumbling over one another, unfinished, uncertain. Lately, that's just how everything feels, like a blur. A question with no answer. It's the question that drives her, the one that drives everyone to the point of madness. Who are we? Where are we going? And how do we get there? She watched the little girl at the next table, sipping her milkshake, her feet swinging under the chair, completely unbothered by the weight of time. Not a care in the world. Oh, how she wished for those innocent days, when the biggest worry was whether her ice cream would melt before she finished it. She took another sip of her coffee, now lukewarm, and let her eyes wander across the cafe. People sitting, people chatting, the rustle of newspapers and the clinking of coffee cups echo, just like the sounds of her thoughts, echoing throughout her mind. That's when she saw him. She never noticed him sitting there when she entered, but there he was. He sits by the window, perfectly at ease, a novel in one hand and a steamed cup of something in the other. There's an effortless confidence about him, the way he turns the page like he has all the time in the world. The slight smirk as if he's in on some grand joke the rest of us don't understand. No hesitation, no uncertainty, just knowing. And suddenly she hated him a little for that, because she had spent years trying to figure things out, and here he is, existing as if the answers were given to him at birth. The stranger lowers his cup absent-mindedly, eyes still glued to the pages, but then he misses. The cup wobbles, nearly tipping over before he catches it at the last second. The whole thing is so unexpectedly clumsy that she can't help but let out a small giggle. He looked up, startled at first, then amused as he catches her eyes. A slow grin spreads across his face as he closes the book and sets it in its place, this time with more care. I didn't think anyone was watching. Voice warm, unbothered. Didn't think you'd almost spill your drink? She counteracted, still smiling. Touché, he replied. He leans back in his chair, studying her for a moment, eyes looking for some kind of doorway into her mind. You looked deep in thought, he finally said. Existential crisis, or just people watching, she found herself chuckling, but it comes out weaker than she intended. A little of both, I guess. He nods, as if that makes perfect sense. Coffee shops are good for that. Something about the noise, but also the solitude. Gives you space to think. He pauses, then adds, sometimes too much space. He says, looking across at the window, a moment trapped in his own thoughts. She blinked, somewhat startled. It was just a throwaway comment, but somehow it feels like he just put words to something she couldn't quite name. Too much space, too much time to think. To overthink. Sometimes too much space, he says, and something about his words lingers. She glanced down at her coffee, tracing the rim with her finger. Yeah, she says finally. Too much time to think. He doesn't push, just a stilt nod of his head, waiting. Do you ever feel like... Her voice trailed off, suddenly aware of how ridiculous she might sound. But when she looked up, he's watching her, not impatient, not judging, just listening. Like what? He asks, gentle but curious. She exhaled, almost laughing at herself. Like everyone else got some sort of handbook on life and I just missed the memo. Her voice was trembling. He grins. Oh, all the time. He leans back in his chair, considering her words. You know, I used to think that too. That everyone else got some secret playbook while I was just winging it. And now? She asked. Now I know they're all winging it too. He smirks, then shakes his head. An old friend once told me no one has it all figured out. Some people are just better at pretending they do. She let that sink in. The thought was first comforting and then nauseating. So what do we do? She asked. Just keep pretending? He chuckles and leans forward, studying her even more. It took him a moment, like he was trying to find the right words to make her understand. No, we stop waiting to figure it out before we start living. That was the real advice I got. You don't need all the answers to move forward. You just need to take the next step. She scoffed, shaking her own head. That sounds nice, but what if I don't even know what the next step is? She couldn't even lift her gaze to meet his. He shrugs, then take any step. Pick something. Try. If it's wrong, you'll know soon enough, and you can adjust. But standing still won't give you answers either. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him it's not that simple, that she was not like him. But something in the way he says it so sure, yet without arrogance, makes her hesitate. She didn't answer. She sipped at her now cold coffee and let his words settle into the quietness between them. She hadn't noticed when the rain stopped, but now sunlight peeked through the clouds, casting a quiet glow over the world outside. It felt almost like the sun knew some great secret one it found amusing, teasing us with the idea that our journey of discovery is more important than the destination, the sun's greatest riddle, but still the answer was just out of reach. As she gazed out, lost in thought, the man followed her line of sight and smiled to himself. Her face softened as the glow of the light hit her face. He watched as she closed her eyes, and for a moment a kind of acceptance washed over her. Slowly, a realization soothed and comforted her. Maybe, just maybe, he was right. The two sat in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, their own fears. He must hide what he was feeling inside. He could tell that she needed someone to be stronger than what he was feeling. Right then, her need was greater than his. The weight of the conversation lingered like a mist between them, like the fading scent of coffee in the air. But for a silent moment, there was peace. That's all for now. Like and follow.